Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to do a weekly metagame breakdown for the timeless best of 3 format on MTG Arena. We're going to look at the top decks, see what people are playing, give you kind of a snapshot of the meta ahead of next weekend's metagame challenge. So the first weekend of December will be a metagame challenge where you can win packs, free packs, free packs, free packs. So we'll take a look. We're going to get the stats from Untapped GG, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, aggregates user win rates, gives a whole bunch of cool stats. The link for Untapped is in the video description. I'll paste all these deck lists and timestamp them so you can copy paste to your heart's content. But yeah, let's jump into it. So there hasn't been a huge volume of data for the last little bit. Seems like a bit of the excitement. There's a loyal following to Timeless, but the volume of games compared to Standard, where they reach 50, 100,000 games in a week, is just not matched in terms of Timeless. So even something like looking at the popularity of decks from Platinum to Mythic, while we'll look at Diamond and Mythic for win rates, this is all that shows up in terms of the actual distribution. Mardu Energy being a big chunk, as well as Omnitel decks. Then you'll have your various like Ritual decks, Dimir decks, kind of Belcher decks mixed into there. So we are going to look, let's just, forgot to scroll up there. 5,200 games in the last 2 weeks. So this is why some folks are asking, oh, like, why haven't you put one out recently? There just hasn't been much data. Last week there was like sub 3,000 games. Diamond and Mythic rank 5,200 games played. So we will take a look. The highest win rate deck is Mardu Energy. So most played, highest win rate. There's a small sample size, so you're going to get some kind of extreme win rates. There's folks who definitely have very high win rates in the format. Keep in mind, like, you lose a couple, this percentage differs a bit, so kind of just focus on the deck constructions themselves. The percentage points are more just kind of tiers. If you get a bunch of decks in the 80s versus like the 50s, then you can kind of base it on that. With the Mardu Energy decks, there's a couple different kind of flex cards where you can play like Cthulhian Nightmare as a reanimation effect. The number of Juggernaut Peddlers might vary. In the main board, Thoughtseize main or no Thoughtseize main. The number of Ragavans could vary as well. But this is a Lurrus companion deck leveraging the energy package, which is also extremely powerful and modern. So you have Galvanic Discharge, that just scalable removal, Guide of Souls, Osseous Pride, a Johnny Bombardment combo, Anthraptor finds you a whole bunch of value in your deck, Static Prison as a catch-all removal as well. Black basically gives you access to the Peddler's main, Bowmaster's Thoughtseize. In the sideboard, you just finish up the amount of Thoughtseizes useful against like the combo decks, control decks. Swords is more just cheap removal, Deafening Silence for the combo decks. Vexing Bauble, again, for any sort of evoke decks, things that are trying to cheat on mana. That kind of plays into that regard. You can bring this in, and then Unlicensed Hearse for Graveyard Hate. We then have a different variation of energy. This is the Boros Energy. So Boros Energy generally will be Giganta Companion and plays a little bit larger. You have access to 4 Flage, Titan of Fire's Fury, as well as Blood Moon. So you turn off all those non-basics. With that, you're playing Aether Hubs to allow you to have a bit more ways to generate energy, so your Amped Raptor can cascade you into the One Ring or Flage or Blood Moon. Still your Goblin Bombardment and Johnny package, and then the 1-drops that we mentioned with the addition of Lightning Bolt since you're not playing like Thoughtseize. So this can go face as well if needed. Arena of Glory can haste out your Flage when you escape it, so you get kind of that double ETB effects, ETB and attack in the same way. Giganta Companion, Surgical for Graveyard Hate, truing up the amount of Blood Moons, Vexing Bauble, which you mentioned. Containment Priest, anything that's either trying to reanimate, cheat into play, Sorin into play. Containment Priest will exile said creature. And then you have Drannith Magistrate, which can lock people out from casting spells from other than their hands. So again, anything looking to use from the graveyard, subsequent exile zone, stuff like that, you can lock it out. Notably, this will lock out your Flage because it's not from hand that you're casting it for escape. Sun Cleanser for the energy mirrors, and then Graveyard Hate with Unlicensed Hearse. We go to Omnitel. So there's a lot of different kind of tweaked versions of the show and tell combo. This one's at 82%. This one here is basically a little bit more control-ish in the sense you have Mana Drain's main, you have protection effects in Veil of Summer, some Inquisitions for hand hate. Planar Genesis can help you either dig for a piece or just kind of ramp at instant speed. The Waterlogged Teaching is a way that you can tutor for Hullbreaker Horrors, which is kind of cool, addition to instants and sorceries. At the core of the deck, you're trying to show and tell and to play Omniscience ideally, and then or Atraxa to help you find the stuff when you have out the Omniscience. This version here is only playing Fae of Wishes, no Mastermind's Acquisition. It will go into your sideboard, and then you would get Approach the Second Sun, you catch Approach the Second Sun, and then this one here tries to find the second copy of it with Dig Through Time, Atraxa, or this does not hit sorceries. So yeah, one of your kind of cards here. Sometimes you'll see the green line that can become a copy of Omniscience. It's skipping my mind from Domain. Shifting Woodlands, that could be played as an alternative to the combo, but that's kind of the lines there. You can kind of just sometimes just win by cheating out an Atraxa or Hullbreaker Horror. Flusterstorm for any counterspell heavy decks, storm decks, stuff like that. Surgicals for graveyard, combo hate, hand hate with Thoughtseize, Veil for protection, Abrupt Decay blows up a number of the different hate pieces, Deafening Silence, Whirling Vortex, anything like that. The creatures that prevent you from playing more than one spell per turn. Corrosive Grip is for the mirror, allows you to have split second to blow up their Omniscience before they can kind of cast their spells, including like Born Upon the Winds, which lets them combo at instant speed. Deluge for a sweeper, and then the Approach of Second Sun is the combo piece. Then have Sultai Control, 80%. So this is just some wholesome, honest magic. Hand hate with like Thoughtseize, Inquisition, cheap removal with the things like Fatal Pushes, Tamiyo full set here. That can be easily flipped with Bowmaster or Treasure Cruise. You have your Psychic Frogs, Bowmasters, Mana Drain, and then Jet Collector here. Pretty easy to flip, and then lets you recur any of your like killed creatures or things that you discard as discard fodder to the Psychic Frog. You do have a little bit of contention with the graveyard where like Frog and Treasure Clues both want to exile things, but for the most part you kind of get that value engine. You have things like Bauble as another way to just have a cheap card draw, and deck thinning. Lurrus Companion, Ghost Vacuum for graveyard hate, Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, cheap interaction, Surgical again. Abrupt Decay in here, just flexible removal. Demonic Tutor is basically just the second copy of whatever sideboard piece you're interested in. That lets you kind of have more of a toolboxy effect. Disruptor Flute for activated abilities. Meat Hook as a sweeper, really good against the energy. Same as the Toxic Deluge, and then another Unlicensed Hearse for graveyard hate. We then go to 4-color Belcher, so 77%. So this is kind of the pseudo all-in combo. There's another Belcher deck we'll cover after this, which is Orzhov. That's got a couple different combo routes, but this one is built strictly to win with the Belcher. And our Belchers are here, 3 of, plus you have the full set of Karn that can then tutor you for the additional Belcher in here. Things like Wizard's Rockets, Dark Ritual help you kind of filter your mana. Wishclaw Talisman can tutor you up effects. Channel can just win you with the Char Belcher, same with Ironcrag Feet. The Ley Line is protection against discard. You have Beseech the Mirror that can help you find your combo pieces as well and cast. And then you use things like Ley Line as fodder, the Wishclaw, Wizard's Rocket as bargain material. Once you activate your Belcher, because all of the cards in your deck are non-land because they're module dual-face cards, you deal damage to your opponent equal to the number of cards in your library. Calling Ritual is actually very strong against like the energy or the low-cost Lurrus piles. That then could potentially generate you enough mana to combo at that same turn. Pact of Negation for more protection effects against like counter spells, similar with Defense Grid to protect you. Haywire Might blows up hate pieces. Inquisition for hand hate. Pick Your Poison for hand hate. Vexing Bauble for... Now notably, this will shut off your Beseech, so keep that in mind. Liquid Metal Coating with Karn to blow up stuff. Stonebrain to deal combo heat pieces. Calling Ritual against like the Lurrus piles, aggro piles, and then a Belcher that can be tutored from Karn. There's that version of Belcher. Then there's the Orzhov Vampire version, Sacrifice. So you have the lines of just like Dark Ritual into Sorin into Glenelenda. Really strong. Turn 1. Dark Ritual into Necropotence, draw a bunch of cards. But you also have the ability with Grief that you evoke Grief or Solitude, and then you cast Sacrifice to sacrifice them to just generate mana off their abilities. So you can like turn 1, Grief with a land out, and then you sacrifice it, get 4 mana, cast Belcher on turn 1. Kind of lines. You have also Dominance and Necropotence, so a bunch of ways to just kind of draw cards. It's basically mull to Dark Ritual, one of these. that then just lets you refill your hand and get a ton of value. Sideboard, very similar, hand hate, cheap removal. March plays really nicely with the Necros because you can discard excess cards at end step. Fence Grid for counter spells, Rest in Peace for graveyard hate, Path to Peril is a cheap sweeper against Lurrus piles. The Slasher is interesting, just like an alternative win condition, turn 1 Slasher. So a lot of times people will take out removal against you because they're going to try to interact with the combo, so you can just have like Slasher solo. Playing this on turn 1 off a Dark Ritual is really strong. And then Leyline of Sanctity for the heavy discard decks. Then have Mono Black Storm. So this deck here, 65%. So it's built around, surprising, Dark Ritual and Necropotence. But this one's a sacrifice combo shell. So you have Jet Medallion out, which lowers the cost of spells. By doing so, you can create a loop where with Cthulhian Nightmare and either Greedy Freebooter or Shambling Ghast, you can sack and bring them back to each other. Keep bringing back Nightmare to hand. These generate treasures. That works. There's also the new card Priest of Gix, which can create a similar loop. With the access to Jet Medallion, it nets you mana. This is basically 3 mana to generate 3 mana, so that you could create the loop there. With the Marionette Apprentice out, you would drain out your opponent from their life. So it's kind of a combo deck there. Diabolic Intent, Demonic Tutor also help you dig for combo pieces. Sideboard, just hand hate, graveyard hate, anti-hate pieces with the Haywire Might. Marches removal, surgical for combo hate. We've covered like a lot of these effects. Meat Hook for energy, another way to blow up various kind of hate pieces that can be recurred off of Cthulhian Nightmare. Baldur's Trade Spy against Belcher is kind of a hate piece. So when it enters, target player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a line card. Put those cards into their graveyard. So against Belcher, this just mills them out instantly. Just kind of cool tech. That's actually really sweet tech against like the Belcher decks. Grief as well, just for kind of the mid-rangey battles. We then have Dimir Oculus, 58%. So this is a Dimir pile that's going to be kind of interacting, lots of hand hate, counters, stuff like that. Your core of like Psychic Frog, Bowmaster, but this version also has access to Oculus that you can get back with Unearth. Overlord of the Baelmar can help you mill into your pieces. So if you like the Dimir piles, this is just a different way to take it. Maybe not as all in on the control, but using kind of a backdoor. Like Oculus closes games out very quick, and this kind of fuels your graveyard with more fodder. Cheap counters between Stern Scolding, Spell Snare, and Spell Pierce as needed. Stone of Errage, good against sacrifice decks and can be graveyard hate. Harbinger of the Sea is kind of a Blood Moon style effect for greedy mana bases. Glistening Deluge for the go wide decks. And then you have Unlicensed Hearse for graveyard hate, Disruptor Flute to blow up interaction, and Surgical Extraction. So the next 3 decks are not the volume of games, but things people are trying out and stuff that I wouldn't be surprised to see some iteration and come up. So these are just some starting points for ideas to share with folks. So this one is from Gabjings. They're 8-3 into Mythic with it, but the big thing with this, there's a couple Alchemy Saga, like a series called the Choruses that all got buffed. Most notably Hymn to the Ages. So this was originally 5 mana. It's 2 mana now. Starting intensity 1. So when you cast this for the first time, you draw a card equal to its intensity. So the first time you cast it, it's just 2 mana, draw 1. But then all chorus cards you own intensify by 1. So in your graveyard, library, whatever it may be. So pairing that with Rabid Shanty, which deals 2 damage for the first time and then scales up. This also interacts. So you cast this on 1, then this suddenly draws 2 cards on 2. There's also Mesellic Ballad that forces each player to sacrifice creatures. You gain X life based on your intensity. So you have all these ways to kind of interact with the intensity. You have Phantasmal Shieldback. This one's an interesting one. I don't know why you'd be playing this. Becomes target spell or ability, sacrifice it. When it dies, draw a card. This is probably not playable, but just play like Thoughtseize, I would say, instead of this. Like this doesn't seem like a reasonable card. But you have your Tameo. Honestly, this or Psychic Frog could be played in here as well. Lots of kind of filler cards that you could try in place of this. But your Tameo package, Snapcaster, getting this back draws you more cards, which is crazy. The Flare of Denial as a counter spell that works with like your blue creatures as well for cheap disruption. Baleful Strix could be played potentially in this. That works with the Flare. And then a lot of kind of the sideboard considerations. Croxa as a way to get some value in the grindier matchups, Pyroclasm for the energy piles. Then we got printed Violent Outburst. So this one didn't have sufficient data, but there's a couple different versions of 4-color and Temur Rhinos that people were trying out. So how it works is Violent Outburst, you build your deck in a way that there's no other cards you can cascade into other than Crashing Footfalls. So you can basically instant speed this at your opponent's end step. You get 2 4/4s with Trample for 3 mana. So you're playing stuff like Brazen Boar or Bone Crusher Giant that could be plays on 2 that circumvent the effect. Teferi for like the counter spells. You have the Evoke package, and then Leyline Binding that takes advantage of just the various tri-lands. Then you have Crossing Grip for like Show and Tell, Dispute for cheap counter, Force of Vigor, Blow Up Artifact Enchantments, Leyline for the heavy kind of counter spell decks, and then Boseiju as Artifact Enchantment hate in the form of a land. And then lastly, we have Boros Burn. Again, not enough games played, but notably we got access to Bolt Wave as another 3-mana shock, as well as Boros Charm Helix. You have Eidolon in here. Skullcrack is shut off anti-life gain. Skewer the Critics. So the one thing with this version here, there's not a lot of card advantage, so you could potentially just run out of gas. The tricky thing is against energy, they gain so much life. So while you have Skullcrack to kind of shut it off for a turn, it's not a consistent way. Light Up the Stage could be something that you might want to consider in lieu of the Skewer. And then your sideboard, you have like Blood Moon to shut off their mana base. Notably, the Blood Moon, how this mana base is configured, it shuts off all your sources of white. So that's something that you want to consider. If you're bringing in that, you might want to take out the Charm and the Helix because they're not useful. Anti-life gain with Ferocidon, that could be good against energy. Roiling Vortex for Show and Tell. Every time they cast free spells, they take damage. Abrade for removal and artifact hate against like Belcher, and then Path to Exile. Now notably with Belcher, if they have enough mana to cast it and activate it at the same time, the Abrade doesn't actually work. So you might want to play something like the Flute, Disruptor Flute in lieu of that. And instead of Path to Exile, you're probably better off. Actually, I guess Path's fine because you don't want Swords to Plowshare, because Swords to Plowshare is basically the life gain's reasonable against this type of shell. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been enjoying, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.